I hope some of you in the audience felt like me, well, and I won't say felt like me, I simply had tears in my eyes at several points in this afternoon. It's to do with this thing of being the link in the chain again, watching so many links going on. We're hearing about Svetlana, we're watching you with Darcey. Darcey is working with the two. It's this heritage is just fabulous, and you're another link in the chain too. It's really moving. And there are you. Tell us about the notation. When was this first done, and you're now adding to it?
Well, this was actually notated when Darcey and Zoltan did it. However, it's notated from original notes that were done by an original notator who notated it when Donald and Svetlana did it. And we think it was done using an original video of Donald and Svetlana, although we're not entirely sure about that.
Because we can't find the video.
We can't find the video.
I've heard Ian Webb and Sarasota say he's got a copy, so it's somewhere there, Sarasota, if nowhere else.
And interestingly, Donald just said that there's a completely different ending.
Yeah.
So, or the
Finished
ending that
up.
you did. So.
Yeah. Yes.
So,
Of the coda.
so interesting.
Anything could be better. We didn't do it very well. We didn't do it very well.
Darcey, how much coaching have you done?
I've done quite a lot. When I lived in Australia for nearly 5 years, I did a lot of coaching there as well. So 9-ish years, bitty. Not consistently, but bitty.
It's wonderful to see you do it. Have you coached Ashton before?
Yes, a lot of the times Cinderella solos. I love those solos, so I love coaching those, yes. Anything, really. Anything that kind of triggers something within me that inspires me, I want to give it back.
Because I was talking about the comparison between Ashton and Balanchine, exact contemporaries, both in 1904, born, watching each other, I believe, like sometimes friendly, sometimes hostile hawks across the Atlantic, of course, both with big seasons in New York in those days. Somebody in the intermission talked about how they loved both choreographers, but said that actually Ashton was harder on dancers than Balanchine because he often made you move where the body wasn't inclined to go. Now, you did a great deal of both. What would you feel?
I think they both have different ways of pushing. I found with Balanchine it was physically more strenuous, so on the legs it was more strenuous, so the attack came very much from underneath the feet and the extensions and the height of the legs. And then Ashton, it was very much about the upper body and the shaping and the bend and the port de bras, which for a dancer, I think when we're a classical dancer, we're always thinking about balance and posture and being straight. To bend a lot is much harder. And I always noticed with Balanchine dancers that they didn't have waists like English dancers did. And I thought that must be all our port de bras, all our bending and using the upper body, where they had much more dynamics within the legs and the power was much more stronger with the Balanchine dancer. So very different pushes,
Wonderful point.
different pushes.
Donald, as you're watching all this happen again, what memories do you have of the original rehearsals? What was Fred like in the room?
Oh, I mean, he was marvellous, really, because you always felt as if you were part of the choreography and not somebody who was just being told what to do. He found out what was good for you and then stretched you. He pushed you further. But he would say, what's your favourite step? And then he would do something with it more interesting. So you always felt as if Kenneth was the same. You didn't. Some people come in and say, and they know exactly what they want, and they know exactly what the music is, and you feel you're creating it with them, which is a lovely feeling with the choreographer.
There are things in your solo that don't remind me of anything I've seen in Ashton. I just love those pirouettes in that low fourth front.
Yes.
And then the change of arms at the end of it. Now,
well,
is there anything like that in Ashton? I love it.
Well,
the ending may be, but
he liked going from slow to quick, and he liked. I mean, he does it in the pas de deux, he does it in the solos. He didn't like to see preparations. He didn't like you to dwell and take a lot of time, and I'm going to do a pirouette. It had to happen, or he liked things to work really spontaneously and fast, and awkward sometimes, but the wrong way around. Like he didn't want what they're calling the Giselle lift, which was very spectacular. He didn't want that to be second, which you would think it would be, leading up to the big. He insisted, and he didn't want it twice. He only wanted it once. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, he was just incredible. And you felt he was doing it for you, and you felt special.
In the ballerina variation, I love when the arabesque on point that then goes off point with a surprising arm. Right?
Well, we were trying to figure out how you don't make it look coy, that it looks very genuine and real. So we tried to imagine that somebody actually was in the corner. So you had Adams, and we looked at her, and then it gave you a feeling of why you were actually producing the move. But also, it's a way of also coming off the leg and moving into the bourrée. So like everything has something to say, or something to mean why you're going on further, you know. So giving
yes,
reasons.
earlier on that variation, I loved, as you say, that arrival in the balance as if you're falling forward.
Yeah.
It's wonderful.
But it's like everything has to fix. It's like you sort of have to break it up because it's so lyrical. But if you break it up, it will naturally become lyrical. But you have to have, as Donald kept saying, finishes to everything, which makes it the clarity of the positioning and the shaping come out.
Now, despite what I said about you coming along at the end of Ashton's lifetime, most of your Ashton repertory came after his death.
Yes.
Did you mainly learn it from Donald or from whom?
Donald, Anthony, Monica, yes. So everybody that would have worked with him, fortunately.
Wonderful. Can I ask you two what it's like? What's your previous experience in dancing Ashton, particularly Ashton solos?
Do you want to go first?
I suppose with the Royal Ballet, a lot of the repertoire is Ashton. So we've been quite fortunate to cover quite a lot of ballets, working in the corps de ballet, but also covering things that are, you know, above Fast Station.
But you're now both first soloists, is that right?
No, I'm a first artist, and so is David. But I find with Ashton, it's so beautifully musical, but it's very awkward. And it takes time to get into your body. So it's not something you can just do. Like some choreography it kind of flows. It doesn't flow naturally. But once you have it, that's the only way, really.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Nice contradiction.
Yeah, it kind of doesn't work, but it works so beautifully.
I think kind of like what Darcey said just earlier, it's, excuse me, there's such a contrast because it's, you know, tight, such technical footwork. And after we just rehearsed, Donald said sometimes less is more. You try to make big positions, but it's, you know, the tight, fiddly footwork that he really liked and the clarity. But then you need to have this expansive upper body and a lot of, you know, there's articulation in the port-de-bras and a lot of bend. So it's kind of, I think, the difficult thing for me, at least, is trying to find that contrast where everything is held in position, but you still have that freedom and expression kind of with your head and your port-de-bras and épaulement.
Wonderful. Gary, can you talk about your role in coaching Ashton for these next generations, both today and generally with the Royal Ballet?
Well, I mean, my experience that I have with Ashton is one of my big iconic things that I would always say is definitely the thing that's kind of grounded me with Ashton is La Valse. Because I think physicality-wise, if you can get through La Valse and you have the quality that is expected of you for La Valse, I think then you've kind of almost nailed what he wanted or what he expected.
Everything in one go, isn't it?
Absolutely, and I think, and the thing that I like to try and instill in people, especially with Ashton's work, is that it's almost like singing from a song sheet. I know I'm a bit of a ballet police person, and I like counts, and I think that's been ground into me because of Christopher Carr. He's very definite about knowing you have to know your counts when you're on stage, and you can hear him singing. But I like the fact that your movement reflects the music, and I think that's if you've been able to do that and achieve that within a dancer is really rewarding, because I think your body needs to be able to sing the choreography. So, and I think that was what he was genius at. I think he really reflected the music choreographically. So, you know, we're talking about it flowing and having slight fast and quick. I think the fact that it actually reflects the music is...
I'm feeling guilty, by the way, because when I introduced everything, I completely forgot to say anything about Marianela Núñez. So rude of me. And it connects to La Valse. The thing I would most want to say, I think she was part of a great Ashton renaissance at the Royal during the Monica Mason regime in time for his centenary. And, you know, Fonteyn says in her memoirs, it was no good. He was always saying bend, and you could never bend as much as he wanted. The only two people who could bend as much as he wanted were he himself and Robert Helpman. If I bent as much as he wanted, if I bent as much as I could, he said it wasn't enough. If I bent as much as he wanted, I fell over. Well, Marianela Nunez once did fall over in La Valse, and she always remembers it and laughs about it, and picked herself up and went straight on. It was wonderful to see somebody in the 21st century really going for the bending all the time, and she then carried it through. I never saw anybody in Coppelia, in Swanhilda, bend right over sideways so much in Rotary on point.
I mean, you would say with reflection on Balanchine and Ashton, look at those shapes that he creates in symphonic. They're very, very like, I wouldn't like to say like Balanchine, but they're very similar. You know, they're very geometric, and I just think, you know, it's all about the shape that he created. And, you know, I go hark back to La Valse. If you can get through La Valse and do what is expected, I think you are physically sick, because he seriously wants you to bend that much. And I think that's what's brilliant.
So also, what happens when you bend is you lose your balance, because the weight of your head, obviously, is the second heaviest thing, well, the heaviest thing. And when you do that bend, and it takes you off balance, and you're tired, it's so difficult, isn't it, to recover? And that's the whole thing, is all of those movements constantly. So you never, as it feels like you're going to be sick. But yeah, and the dancer never likes that feeling, because especially when you're on stage, it's so dark, and constantly trying to find where the light is, if you can see something to balance. But you're looking at a dark floor. Every time you bend over, oh my, oh my, oh my, oh my, yeah. Yeah, it's really hard.
But I think just going back to saying about passing it on, I think the most important thing is having people like Donald and all of those people that were there and worked with him. Because I, sadly, was never in a room with him. I joined the company just after he passed away. So I never really learned from him, but I feel that I've learned such a lot from just being in a room with the people that were with him. So,
but can I just say too that when I first joined the company, he also rehearsed Svetlana and I in the classics, and which was wonderful, because it became less rigid and more bend, and also telling the story better. You know, he had...
Do you remember which classics he coached you in?
Oh, Swan Lake, and mainly Swan Lake and Sleeping Beauty, but he was very helpful with Swan Lake. It gave you a different idea of how to do it, really.
He did it through his whole career. Curiously, back in 1933, when the Vic Wells first did the Aurora's Wedding Pas de Deux, before they did the rest of Sleeping Beauty, I think it was Markova and Pearl Argyle were the two Auroras. Pamela May was the one who watched. She was a new girl in the company, and she used to talk to me about how in the bit after, I think, Supported Pirouettes and Arabesque, Aurora just walks around the stage, and Fred really took ages to make you walk weightedly, really feeling it through the hip. So you just took time, and then you just arrived again.
Yes. Oh, yes. But I mean, he was full of things like that, even the focusing, the smiling, you know, he had everything to the nth degree, every detail. It wasn't just do this, it was do it the way he felt you should do it for that particular role or for the particular reason you were doing it. There was always a reason. I always feel, especially with Swan Lake, that the mime scene, I think, is absolutely wonderful. And I don't like it when you don't have the mime scene in it, because it tells the story. But it just is so beautiful. And I can remember Margot coming back. Did you do it with Margot? She came back when she was really, really old, and she was terribly sick too, and she never got off her chair. She sat with my black pug on her lap, and she did, and I had danced Swan Lake with Margot, so I was being the prince to all these 5 ballerinas, and she talked, and she told the story, and she said, you know, you're nervous, but then suddenly you get verbal diarrhea, and you're, you know, and you know, if you have this in your head, when you go on the stage, you've got the script in your head, it comes over to them. If you don't have the script in your head, it doesn't.
And I remember when I interviewed you back in '94, I said you've had an amazing lot of coaches for a young ballerina. Who have you enjoyed the most? And you said, oh, Margot.
Yeah, well, I think it was such a surprise as well. So I didn't know that it was going to happen. And what she said to me was nothing to do with any of my technique. It was about telling the story. And as a young artist, it was a massive input. I will never forget those fine details. And it was about stagecraft, spacing, and as Donald says, suddenly you get excited and you want to tell him everything, and then, oh, I've told him too much, oh. But you were always a woman all the way through, never a swan. You know, there was always a woman first, which was a really lovely thing to say, because I was constantly trying to be this swan all the way through and have all these mannerisms. And she was like, no, you're a woman, darling. Like that. I was like, oh, okay, fine. You know, remember, that's the first thing you are, you know. It was really, really something.
Another story from those coaching. Are we going over time?
Finish your story.
It's just one that's always made me laugh, but it's Maria Almeida told it at the Fonteyn conference in 2004, whenever it was, 1999. Coach for the beginning entrance of Aurora, Fonteyn looked at Maria Almeida, whom, as you remember, was a cool, collected dancer. And so Fonteyn stopped her and said, Maria, summoned her forward and said, are you nervous when it comes to performances? Maria, at the conference, said, I wondered, was this a trick question? So I thought, I better tell the truth. So she said, yes, I'm petrified. And Fonteyn said, that's great, use it. Turn your nerves into stage energy. And Maria said, that was great advice. And then we went into the Residagio, and Fonteyn stopped me again and said, can I look at your blocks, Maria? And Maria said, I did take rather large blocks, actually.
Yeah, she had massive.
So Fonteyn had a look at the blocks and said, Maria, why on earth are you nervous with blocks like those? We've gone over time, I'm afraid. There is so much to say. What a wonderful pas de deux this was. I feel very fortunate. May we please thank all of these wonderful artists. Congratulations. Thank you. So moving.